Welcome back to Add from Scratch Module Core, and we're going to pick off from where we left off last time. So in session 1, we have covered the following. So first, how does Add from Scratch works? Basically, I'm going to build my app, and I'm going to show you how I do it, and you can follow along to try to do what I did, or as well as building your own app. And we also touch a little bit on what is Node.js and why people use it, what's it good for. And obviously, that given the fact by today Node.js is already fairly popular, chances are you would already know about most of the information there. And finally, we have done a Hello World web server in Node.js in the last session. And what we're going to do is that we're going to continue to expand on it. Basically, think of it this way. Every single thing that we write is going to become a production application. So with that in mind, we're going to keep on trying to grow our app by adding more functionalities to it, by figuring out how to get it structured better. And with each session, we'll improve it bit by bit. So what is it today that we're going to try to accomplish? We'll try to accomplish improving the routings of the incoming HTTP requests. So if we recall the last time, what we did was that we were able to run the web server, and when we run the web server, it doesn't matter exactly what we type in there, and actually forget about this particular arrow because that's not where the key is. What we really want to see is this, that it doesn't matter what particular URL that we put in here, it always gives back the same answer. Okay, and that is because effectively our application only has a single route. When the request comes through, no matter what the request URL is, we are doing exactly the same thing. So what we're going to do today is that we're going to improve upon it, so that way, depending on the URL the users passed in, it can direct us to different parts of the application. Okay, so I first just fixed the error that we have here since the last time around, and so we're gonna rerun this, and we won't see that particular error anymore. And it's still happening the same way. No matter what URL we type in here, foo, it's gonna give us back the same answer as if we type it passing in the URL path of bar. Okay, so let's just try to address that particular problem right now. And we're gonna do this in the simplest way that we could do it. So obviously, the simplest way is that we can try to switch on the URL. Okay, so when we do that, let's just say that if the case is foo, in this case, we're going to do the following. You have reached page foo. Okay. And then if it's, say, for example, case of bar, then we're going to do basically the same thing, but instead we'll print out that you have reached page bar down here. And finally, for any of the other possible options, we want to run what we have previously run so far, which is to run this reading file function. So let's do it this way for now. Okay. All right. Let's save it, and then we'll start the server again. Now let's go back. And remember, this is what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the read.js gets printed, and so let's go ahead and refresh this. And with the path of bar, we're now seeing that you have reached page bar. And then if we now change this to foo, then we can see that you now have reached page foo. And finally, for anything else, let's just say that we're gonna type in baz. It is still going to take us back to the original function, which is to print out the read.js file. Okay, so but this kind of gives us the understanding that, say, as long as we can have some value that we are switching on, then we can now start to basically redirect the traffic to wherever we want to go, and then we can then refactor this out. So let's try to refactor out the function calls that we have here. Let's pull this part out into its own function. Take it out, put it on above, go ahead function, foo handler, and then we're gonna take in rec and res. Okay, and I made a small typo here. Let's fix that, remove that star. Now we can then substitute the function call here, foo handler, rec res. Okay. And we can do the same with bar handler, regress. Okay, return bar handler down here. And finally, we can also have a default handler, regress, and which will take this particular async call that reads the read.js file. Alright, so with this structure now, our existing top level handler now looks a little bit more sane, and he also gave us the understanding that in the future, if we want to continue to add additional handlers, we know what the pattern will look like. Right? So we can add, say, for example, we want to redirect traffic to reading some sort of files, maybe say main.js, so that we load a dynamically generated a JavaScript file. Then we know what to do here. We can add that fairly easily. So let's see if we make any mistakes, or did we write a clean code here. So let's try it again. Refresh this page. Oh, we cannot refresh. So it means that we now have made a bit of mistake. Let's take a look. It says default handler is not defined. So I probably have a typo somewhere. Let's take a look. Yep, default handle. That's in JavaScript, these are the type of errors that you can run into fairly easily. So as a matter of fact, starting in the next couple modules, we will be switching to a better solution than just writing in plain JavaScript. Just to keep that in mind. But for now, we'll still continue to do this. So let's do start again and refresh. Yep, so this works. And then let's take a look. Is our foo and bar still working accordingly? Yes, they are. All right, so the basic pattern is fairly clear. You can create handlers that takes in basically a request as well as a response, and you can have a bunch of these handlers. Each one does specifically what you want it to do. And then finally, you gotta make sure that you have some sort of dispatcher that, depending on the type of properties that you want to dispatch against. For now, we have a simple version that just dispatch against the URL, but you can potentially also dispatch against the method, as well as the query parameters, headers, things like that, if you really want to get very extensive. And you know, obviously that every single time you want to add an additional handler, you have to come in here and make changes to this code. But this is roughly the patterns that you can look for when you're writing a routing functionality on the server side for Node.js. Okay, and obviously, you know, if you really think about this, it's gotta be something that pretty much every single web application that is built within Node.js does. As a matter of fact, this is actually something that not just a Node.js application do, but pretty much every single web application written either Java, Ruby, Python, PHP, they all had to do something that has to do with the HTTP routing. So it should be a pretty solved problem. And so what is potentially a solution that Node.js should have provided for you, right? Because this should be a pretty solved problem. And as we said before, that in the Node.js ecosystem, they use npm to store all the different reusable packages. So if we go on to npm.js.com, then you can see that there, I mean, as a matter of fact, we had to do a bit search because it's a bit hard to discover. But over here, you can see there's 470,000 free code packages in the npm registry. Okay. So if we search for, say, for example, routing, let's see what we can find. Okay. So you can see that there's a bunch of different type of routings. And one of the most popular ones that we, especially specifically what we will be using in app from scratch, is this one called Express. Now this particular package has its own website, and you can go there to look at the specific details. Let's just go directly. Didn't see the particular link. expressjs.com. So, you know, it says it's fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js, and I've used it extensively for a while now. I can more or less agree that is very true of a statement. And it's also true that the many popular frameworks are built on top of Express as well. So we'll do this, we'll follow the same thing. We'll try to make use of Express. And so let's come back and let's try to start to make use of Express. First, in order to make use of Express, you have to first pull down the packages for you. And we do that via the npm command. So npm install, then Express, just like that. Enter. And now it doesn't print anything, but okay, it comes back now. It shows you something that looks like this, and it will show you a little bit different on the Mac or Linux. But basically, it's telling you that the npm, and specifically version 4.15.3 has been installed. And furthermore, it gives you these additional thing that says warning, no file, no such file directory, package.json. So, okay. And so it's giving you a warning saying that it does not find this particular file, package.json. What is that file? So package.json is how npm knows that, okay, in this particular directory and everything underneath it, it's considered as a package, or in other ways, module. And once you decide to create an npm package, you can publish this just like what Express does, that they have this sets of code that can be reusable and then can be published and managed together as a single package. So even though you might not necessarily publish what you have onto the npm registry, it's still a good idea to basically create package.json, because package.json is quite useful in terms of trying to manage all the different type of configurations that your project will need. So for example, if we don't have package.json, then in the future we will have to keep on typing in npm install express again and again. And then, but if that's easy if the only module that the only package that we're reusing is Express. But let's imagine that you might be reusing, say, 20 or 30 such libraries. After all, npm has hundreds of thousands of libraries, so I'm sure that there's at least a few that you will want to make use of. So instead of you having to type npm install module 1, module 2, module 3, module n, okay, instead of you having to type in all of that every single time, if you have package.json set up correctly and you have all the required dependency packages tracked within package.json, then you can just type in npm install, and then what it would do is it will open up the package.json file, try to figure out what are the dependencies available required, and then try to install those for you. Okay, so it's definitely very useful even if you don't choose to publish your package onto npm itself. But let's try to create that package.json, and it's fairly straightforward process. First thing that you do is you type npm init, and then now it's going to walk you through a set of the process, basically. It's a wizard to help you to generate that package.json. So First thing he asks for is a name. What's the name of the module? So module core, even though we call it that way, but we want this to be globally identifiable as much as we can. So we'll type in app from scratch core for now. Okay, version 1.0.0. Usually it's up to you how you want to name it, but until there's some, I usually go by the convention that until I have something that I believe is mature, I start with the version 0. So I'll do it that way. And description, this is the source code that accompanies the module core of app from scratch. Okay, entry point for now, we just set it to index.js. Test command, we'll leave it alone for now. And then the repository, it will read the information directly from your Git setup. So keywords, web development framework, basic website, Node.js learning. Okay, author, Mr. Chan, from scratch.com. And license, we'll go with the default for now. Then now it's going to prompt you back all these information. Is it okay? Yes. So looks like down the current version of the npm, this doesn't terminate. Let's see if the file is generated though. So the package.json is generated with the information that we were looking for, so which is great. So now let's try to start to make use of the npm. One of the nice thing about npm is that there are some predefined command that you can try to overwrite, and we could do that by opening up the package.json. And so if we look under the scripts, there's currently a test, and it doesn't really do anything. We can see that it just says echo error no test specified and exit 1. So but we'll fix that once we start to add more test cases. For now, let's just go ahead and try to run the current code that we have by adding the start command. And over here we just need to type npm start, and basically it will now run node index.js. Now you cannot simply add any sort of command here and expect it to work that way, because in the general pattern for the scripts here is an npm followed by the script command, but it's actually npm run me. Let's see. Okay, it's actually, so it's not npm something. Okay, when you type that, it will tell you, say, hey, you're giving me the wrong command, because npm, the only accepted commands are these ones over here. So if you have a user defined script that does not match one of these currently known commands, you cannot just run that. You type, instead of typing npm run something. Whoops. Have a typo there. Let's type again. npm run something. See, now it runs running me. It prints out. So just keep that in mind. There are only some specific commands where you can type it without using the keyword, without using the actual command name, which is run. And actually, I think it's actually short for run script. So npm run script something. npm run script start. And because start is a defined command within npm, you can just type npm start like that. Okay, So now if we come back here, we refresh it, it still does the same thing. Great. So we now know that we have added the npm package JSON, and we have also installed Express, but we have not started to make use of them yet. So, but the first thing that we want to do is that we want to save Express into package JSON, and we do that by typing npm install -- save Express like this. And when we hit enter, it will, unfortunately, actually looks like it's getting smarter now. It knows that the Express has already been installed, and all it has to do is to add that string into package JSON. You can see now dependency now has Express, and then it follows what's called SAMVer, semantic versioning, and this caret in front of this number is saying that, okay, a version number that is greater than or equal to 4.15.3, but try to make sure that it's major version compatible. Okay, so for example, if 4.15.4 is released, then that version will be pulled down, even though we are specifying 4.15.3 in our dependency. And this, in practice, it works out okay, but there are times that the npm packaging has some challenges. We won't go into that right for now, but just to keep in mind that sometimes you might find that it's pulling down a version that it says it's compatible. However, there are introduced bug inside. So it's unfortunately part of the realities of Node.js development, that there are modules that you will depend on that will introduce bugs in the future but you don't know about because you have not tried to upgrade your packages. So it's one of those things where that you just have to learn to live with as the reality of using someone else's packages. We'll talk about those in the future as we gain more experiences with it. Okay, now let's come back to our code. We have not yet started using Express yet, but since we have just pulled it down, now let's try to make use of it. Require Express. Okay. So after you pull in the package Express, then what you can now do is to define your what Express calls an app, and all you had to do is to take the Express module and then treat it as a function like this. Okay, evaluate it, and it'll return an application object. And then we just need to start to add our handlers to the app object, and then finally run it with the server. So it kind of look like this. Basically, we have now created an app. Actually, probably better for me to move this line of code further down, so that way you can see it closer toward the servers. So that's the first thing. And then now the second part is just replace this with an app. Okay, but actually that's before we do that, that's because I want to make sure I remember what is the path I'm using. So over here we do it like this: app.get, and then the path foo equals foo handler. Okay, so that's equivalent of this. It's basically this get means that we are trying to dispatch it against the HTTP method get. So for example, if we instead type in post foo handler, then the refresh will not do it, because when you're refreshing your browser, it's issuing an HTTP GET. So this is matching against HTTP post instead. So you want the GET version when you're trying to do a GET, and then the same for the bar. So bar handler. And then finally, if you want anything to match, then you can use the method use. And in this case, we're just passing in the default handler like that. Okay, so these 3 lines, well, specifically these 4 lines right here, these 3 lines right here is equivalent to this switch block right here. And then finally we get rid of this default dispatcher and then passing in app instead. Save it like that. We can then go back to start npm again. And when we refresh this, we're going back to the page bar. And then when we type in foo, we have reached the page foo. And then when we type in anything else, we will reach the default handler. Okay, so why are we using Express instead of what we were doing earlier? The main reason is that this is until you have more advanced dispatching needs, chances are Express will handle 95% of all your needs, basically. And it's very easy to extend it. If I want to add a new handler, I can just add it right here and just try to do one for, say, XYZ. Then we can just write a function here, res, and this is the XYZ handler. Then come back here, type in XYZ. We'll see this to show up as well. So Express makes you to be able to customize your code, adding handlers, removing handlers in a much more modular fashion. You can say, for example, define your handlers in a different module altogether, and then load it here, so on. And it also defines what's called the middleware. So, for example, if we want to add a middleware that will print out the sentence hello before every single one of these handlers, we can say something like this. Function, say hello middleware. And then it takes in rec, res, and then, so the middleware takes in one additional parameter. And that additional parameter is something called next, which is a function that either takes one single parameter or 0 parameter. In the case when it takes 0 parameter, it says, okay, the next function, the next middleware runs. And then if it takes in if it takes in one value, the value that it takes in is an error, which will then go all the way to the error middleware. And the error middleware has the following signature. So it's a 4 parameter signature, and the first one starts with error. Then it will take in a rec, res, and then next. You can actually skip next, I think, if you want, but let's just do it this way for now. Let's say here something like this. Okay, res set header. Actually, let's do status code equals 500, and then res end. This is the default error middleware. Okay, and then we're going to install that at the very end. App use error middleware. Okay, and it means that if you always want the last thing to in the organization of your middlewares, you want the last one to be your error handler, so that way nothing escapes all of your errors. Now, for our say hello middleware, we can do something like this. Res send. Actually, is this send available? No, send is not. yet available. Let's see what is available. Let's just print this out to the console like this. Console log, we are saying hello, and then let's do rec URL. But then we have to then call next afterwards. Okay, and then so we can run say hello middleware before we run foo handler. Like that. And then we can also do the same thing before bar. But if we want to do it, this is, so when we passing it like this way, it means that we want to run this middleware specifically for this particular path. But another way that we can do is basically do a use as well. And then say, and put passing, when we pass in the middleware like that, what we're saying is that we're going to run this middleware for every single endpoint that we have. Okay. So the behavior right now for the code is that for every single endpoint, we will print out this sentence. Okay. And then if there's any error, we will reach the error middleware at the end. But for now, what it means is that because we don't have any particular error, we're not going to reach this line right here. So let's take a look at our new behavior. So npm start again, and if we come back here, we do a refresh. Now let's go back and look at what's printed out. You can see that now we are saying hello, XYZ is now printed out. And that is the middleware say hello. And now if we want to say, for example, run bar as well. So coming back to here, we can see that the middleware is still printing this out as well. So now if we can induce an error condition somewhere in our code, then we can see that it will skip over the default error handler and then go into the error middleware. So perhaps we can have a function that will do this. Let's try throw error if reached regress, and we will just throw new error I am reached. Okay, and then in our error handler we will print out the error object. And now we will add this one for get error, throw error if reached. So now if we type in the /error path, we will throw an error, and that should take us to the error middleware by printing out the error information. Let's reload. And let's see. Okay, refresh this, doesn't give us any error. And now let's try for the error condition, see if it triggers the error page. Yes, it now prints. This is the default error handler, and we didn't add space, so it starts with error I am reached, and throw error if reached, so on. Okay, so the flexibility of Express is that you can decide exactly how you want to dispatch and chain your middlewares together. We can add middleware for example, trying to determine whether or not the user is authenticated. We can add a middleware trying to say, for example, loading up a database connection, so on. And then we can also have a middleware to clean up things if there's some sort of problems afterwards. So as we develop more functionalities into our app, we will be seeing more usages and more combinations of Express middlewares. And we'll also see that there will be quite a few third-party Express middlewares that we can make use of as well. So from if you know, for a framework, it's about one of the minimalistic framework that you can make use of to build on top of it. And obviously that you can also try to choose a more complex framework that can do more for you. But from my personal perspective, this is roughly what I like in terms of working with someone else's framework, because I usually like to structure code in a particular way, and not every single other framework out there will give you the same level of flexibilities if the way that you structure your code is a bit different from how the framework designer structures their code. So just to keep that in mind, and in app from scratch, we will stick with the Express framework. So this will give us quite a few extensibility that we can work with, given now that we have ability to route to where we want our code to route to. And then so in the future modules, we'll then start focusing on ensuring to add the right handlers for the particular functionalities that we're looking for. Okay, so this is the end of session 2, and if there's any questions, as usual, feel free to let me know any questions that you have. Thank you.